Hello, viewers, and welcome to our latest interview. I'm here with Patrick Keane, Action Network CEO. Patrick, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to you about all things US affiliates and the upcoming NFL season. But to start off with, I wanted to ask you, obviously, Action Network was acquired by Better Collective last year. I wanted to ask if you could kind of walk me through the history of the affiliate and the company before that acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. So Action Network was the combination of three different assets. One was a company called Sports Action, which was built for pick tracking, a little bit of content. And then the two other businesses were Sports Insights, which is a high-end betting service and product. Almost think of it as a Bloomberg terminal for sports betting. And then lastly, Fantasy Labs, which was a product that was built for daily and season-long fantasy. So the Chernin Group, which was our major and largest investor, combined those three assets into one, which became Action Network. I joined as CEO about 4 years ago, and we sold the company to Better Collective about 16 months ago. And, I think what was most attractive to Better Collective about our business was Better Collective is one of, if not the largest affiliate business in Europe and Latin America. And they had a growing business in the US and wanted to continue to see that grow. And so acquiring Action Network, which is a combination of affiliate revenue, which is our dominant source of revenue, where we work with sportsbooks to deliver customers for them. And then secondly, we have a subscription platform where engaged, thoughtful sports betting users are getting the highest quality content, data, and tools to help inform their betting, help them track their bets, and help them use data to better inform how they can improve their betting.
How have things changed for you guys since the Better Collective acquisition, or is it more of a case of more of the same and the parent company just kind of letting you get on with things?
They've been allowed us to be pretty independent in how we operate. And, I'm still CEO of Action Network. We've been able to use considerably more resources. Better Collective is a very profitable, largely well-funded public company. So to be able to have more resources to be able to invest. And they also have, decades of experience in doing this and being in the affiliate business in Europe. So they've been extremely helpful as a partner to us and are allowing us to, continue to do what we do well, which is create the best products and technology for sports bettors and the best content and media and podcast and video and everything that's going to inform sports betting. So they've largely left us alone, which has been really helpful and given us the resources we need to grow.
Sure. No, sounds good. The NFL season obviously is sort of upcoming, and that's huge for US sports betting. Sort of forms the backdrop of our discussion here. What do affiliates? Quite a broad question for you. I want to hit you with here. What do affiliates need to do to kind of help win the acquisition battle for customers?
Well, they need to do a number of things. One way they're going to win that is going to be a partner of Action Network. We're as good at this as anybody there is in the world. So we are really, not to get too jargony, but we're really at the bottom of the funnel for acquisition for a sports bettor. And remember, these are people who are doing a search for Cowboys, Eagles odds, or Sixers, Nets odds. And that user is still driven primarily through natural search. 60+% of our audience is driven through natural search. So that still is the reality of most acquisition sources for a lot of these books. So having a strong brand, being really disciplined, thoughtful, and technologically savvy around SEO are ways that you're going to win in this category. But also you need to have a pretty diverse mix of strategies to acquire customers. It can't just be all of your eggs in the SEO bucket or all in the media bucket or all in another. You really need to think about SEO and think about media. So buying audio assets and video assets and buying Action Network, we really like to think of ourselves as the Travelocity or Expedia of sportsbooks, where you're going to find the best offers, the best odds, and the best partners. So we think it really needs to be successful, a combination of strategies and tactics, and no singular one is going to win for a book.
On that note, though, how much more competitive is the kind of US sports betting affiliate scene now? Because obviously there's European firms and affiliates coming into US, such as Better Collective, for example. I know you mentioned the kind of key methods to succeed there, but is it a lot tougher now than it was sort of 4 or 5 years ago to actually succeed in those key areas?
It absolutely is. I mean, and that's the nature of being a more competitive market. I mean, here in the US, you really have FanDuel and DraftKings being the leaders and having a legacy of experience in DFS before sports betting became legal and PASPA was overturned in 2018. So we've now had 4.5 years of a pretty competitive marketplace. But the reality too is some of these books have been fortunate that certain states are a little slower for legalization. So
Hmm.
those mobile states, of which there are now 20, New Jersey being the first, was very competitive. And then you see Pennsylvania and Colorado and Michigan and Tennessee and New York and Illinois. And, these are all very competitive areas to play in. So I think the books are rethinking how they're acquiring customers and thinking mostly about how to acquire the most profitable customers they can, and
Hmm.
not just acquiring customers necessarily in mass, but getting to that profitable better, hopefully within 2 years or less, is sort of what they're trying to hit. And we as partners of theirs have to help them do it.
Hmm. You mentioned a few states there, and inevitably, New York came up, and I wanted your thoughts specifically on New York because from the UK looking in, you've got the big players there, some big brands, but at the same time, obviously, a limited number of operators, huge taxes, and huge marketing costs for an affiliate. How do you kind of view New York as a state in terms of maybe attractiveness?
Well, you mentioned exactly what I think about with respect to New York. Taxes are a concern. A lot of books were careful about entering the New York market, but the New York market is by several orders of magnitude the largest market for sports betting on the mobile basis in the US. That'll change hopefully with California in the next year or so. But New York is such a beachhead of opportunity. It's the largest city in the United States. It
Hmm.
is filled with avid and new sports bettors, which is another thing that's really important here. It's one thing to try and get the most avid, most experienced sports bettors, but to get the casuals and to retain those casuals is going to be a big opportunity for these folks to grow. So one of the other things that's been interesting about New York was, as big as New York is, we
Hmm.
only got a partial part of the football season, only the playoffs. So in 13 days when the NFL season starts, and in 2 days when college football starts, we're finally going to have a full year of legal mobile sports betting in New
Hmm.
York, which I am very confident is going to be massive because, again, we only really got a portion of the season last year.
Sure, yeah, plenty to look forward to there. But I guess for everyone involved, kind of on the business side, if the taxes were a little bit lower, that massive handle, obviously you'd see a lot more of it just in the GGR column instead.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I could see that changing over time. I think you've
Hmm.
seen certain books like a Bet365 and others being a little more cautious and
Hmm.
entering certain states more slowly. Fanatics is another one that we'll see in the category at some point, but I think that higher north of 50% tax rate is certainly scaring off a lot of books. But at the same time, you want to acquire these customers as early as you can to start that clock of profitability as it sort of matures. And I think a lot of books have been really focused on those sort of net new depositors without really investing as much as they probably should in redepositing and retention. This has been about acquisition and less about retention and engagement. And
Hmm.
content becomes one of the most important sources of engagement and retention. So you're starting to see a number of the books invest more in content and invest more in content assets. FanDuel announced the other day the launch of their branded content cable-ish network for sports
Yeah.
betting. DraftKings acquired VSiN. We're one of the top, if not the top source of content in the sports betting category. So you're going to start to see a lot more of these books invest in content as a retention and engagement tool.
Hmm. On that note, back to the NFL, the upcoming season. Is this season, I guess, somewhat of a game changer in the sense that I believe that you feel that fan engagement is going to be the highest it's ever been. Is it a new season on the horizon as it's the biggest crossover between sports betting and NFL for this upcoming campaign?
Well, we think it will be. I mean, the NFL, from being a league that really was, like many others, really, I won't say against, but not really supportive of sports betting 5, 6 years ago before it was legal,
Mm.
they're in a sense, to use a betting term, all in at this point. So you're starting to see the broadcast experience become a little bit more integrated and more friendly to the sports bettor. I think the reality they all know is that there's a fair percentage of these folks that are watching a game in the fourth quarter of a blowout or the eighth inning of a close game because of sports betting, because they might have some money on the line. And again, this is pure entertainment. I mean, the reality of sports betting, even if you're an absolute expert, you're an expert 50.25% of the time. So it's a big revenue source for all these leagues. And also, I would say for the owners of these organizations and the owners of these teams, sports betting has really driven enterprise value and franchise value over the past few years, in addition to rights fees. So there's just more money in an already massive market of sports, and sports betting is bringing hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunity that can be spread across all of them.
Is that very much where you think the future of the industry is going? Crossover between media and sports betting. I mean, I spoke to the FanDuel CEO, Amy Howe, once, and she said that we may get to a stage where every sportscast has odds on it, but you have the option to just turn them off if you're kind of with your kids and you don't want to kind of get involved in the sports betting side of, on that evening.
I believe that to be the case as well. I mean, consumer choice is important, but also authenticity is really important to users. When, again, it's funny when you see the end of games and a certain player running at the end of a game that doesn't have much, doesn't have much on the outcome of the game, but is running the extra 3 yards in the last fourth quarter because prop bettors really care about that. And so I think it really leads to engagement. But it also, again, needs to be authenticity, because the reality is, I don't know what percentage of people who are watching a game are betting on it. It's not half, but it's also not in single-digit percentages. So you need to appeal to your customers, you need to appeal to your users, and you need to really think about the authenticity of the broadcast.
From the Action Network perspective, specifically, what kind of plans have you got for the upcoming season? Is there anything new you're trying, or is it very much kind of, the core offering, just keeping it up?
We're really investing more deeply in media this year. So one of the things that we're really excited about in our app is our media center, and that media center is above the fold, really central to the consumer experience on our app. And it's going to feature our live shows, which we're doing every Saturday and Sunday before NCAA and NFL broadcasts. So we really want to bring more of that media experience around our podcasts, our video content, and really bring more of a multimedia experience to sports betting. As much as SEO does drive a ton, and subject and verb that we're creating for our users on our web products and our app products are really important, but we know that there are certain people that half an hour before a game or half an hour before launch want to just consume content as quickly as possible, make decisions on how to bet, and we think that video and audio are really effective tools to be able to do that.
That's very interesting from the affiliate side. And actually, I've only got one more sort of topic I wanted to discuss with you from the operator, from the book side. If you kind of had a short list maybe of do's and don'ts out of this NFL season, what do you think operators should be doing when it comes to maybe to acquisition and retention, and what kind of things should they be avoiding, pitfalls, things like that?
Well, I definitely think a lot about retention. I think we've been in a market where it's been all about acquire customers as cheaply and quickly as possible. And I think you really need to think about that bettor you might have acquired last year or the year before or 6 months ago. And that same bettor needs to be alerted to the quality of your offers, the quality of your product, and also your prices. So remember, sports bettors are not loyal to brand, they're loyal to price and odds. And the best prices and the best odds where they're going to gravitate towards. And, another component of the sportsbook experience that can be a bit of a challenge for net new bettors or people who want to redeposit is the interfaces and experience when you're trying to redeposit or even deposit for the first time can be a little daunting. The need to deliver your social security number and license and these things that are necessary from a legal point of view. And I'm not saying they shouldn't exist, but it needs to be a little easier for a consumer to seamlessly deposit, redeposit. And again, I think that this market needs to think a lot more about retention. And one of the great retention tools we have at Action Network is BetSync. So when you place a bet with a book, and that bet automatically syncs into the Action platform, and you're able to track your bets and your success and, or in my case, failure over the next year, you can really see how you're doing and prioritize based on strategy, based on sport. And we think that's incredibly valuable. And as a tool, BetSync is what we have built for the books to drive deeper retention in their platforms. And we've had nearly 300 million picks tracked in our platform. So that's a little bit of product and technology, but I would highly recommend for books to use BetSync as a product to retain their users. Because remember, as I said, this is less about brand, because most sports bettors are going to have multiple books on their phones. It's just pretty easy to go from book to book and just see where you're going to get the best price for, the Eagles 9.5 win total for the season. I'm hitting the over personally. But to be able to see that and see that it might be minus 150 at DraftKings and minus 120 at FanDuel. So that user, we need to educate them to think about that. And I think the books need to realize that their users are just getting more sophisticated every year.
Mm-hmm. Well, Patrick, thanks very much for your time and your answers. Good luck for the NFL season at Action Network. And with my very limited NFL knowledge as a UK as a soccer fan, are you rooting for any team in particular yourself?
For football?
Yeah.
Well, I think all of my allusions to Philadelphia sports teams would tell you I'm on the Eagles. I'm a huge Eagles fan. I think the Eagles are the top of the NFC East. A lot of people like the Cowboys, but I think the Eagles are going to have a great season. They look great on both sides of the ball, and it's all going to be on Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, and I'm really hoping he has a great year and we get to 10 wins.
Well, best of luck with that, and you heard it here first. Instead of let's go over on the 10 wins. I'm just thinking that over on the 10 wins. Is that possible?
It is.
Okay, good. I was just hoping that you're not saying 10 out of 10 and saying over.
No, there's 17
maker.
We're 17 games in the NFL season, and the Eagles are at 9-5. So I'm hoping to get over that 9-5.
Okay. Well, best of luck, Patrick, and thank you very much for your time and for your answers.
Absolutely.
Cheers.